Every building has doors, but some doors are never meant to be open, unless you're the one holding the key, or the one who needs to disappear. Fort Myer, Virginia. A cold February afternoon in 1998. Beneath the pale, flickering fluorescent lights of the Pentagon's 5th basement level, Edward Mark stood motionless in a steel corridor so long, the end was lost in shadow. The overhead glow reflected coldly off the metal walls, and his footsteps echoed in a strange, muted way. No reverberation, no spread, like the sound was swallowed whole by the walls. He had worked here for nearly 2 decades. Top secret clearance, special access card, triple daily fingerprint scans. Everything was logged except what happened inside the nameless room. They didn't call it room 509, 5X, or anything memorable. Internally, it was referred to by a single term, the vault. No one discussed it. No one looked in its direction. Young guards were told one thing clearly: forget it exists, or leave this place. Edward didn't forget. That day, he held a thin, yellowed file in his hands, unmarked by classification symbols. A rarity in a place where even lunch menus carry coded labels. But that was exactly what made it so unsettling. Bermuda, 1954. Recovered object unexplained. Just one bold line, centered on the file's cover. No sender, no recipient, no clearance code. Edward had no idea why it was on his desk. According to the archive system, it didn't exist. He glanced around. The 5th level was deserted. Surveillance cameras didn't seem to track him anymore. The HVAC system cut off for 8 seconds, and in that moment, Edward understood if he opened this file, he could never return to being a regular employee again. He opened it. Inside was a blurry black and white photo, a deserted beach, and in the center, an elliptical object half buried in sand. Footprints circled it, leading toward the ocean, then vanished completely. No trail, no vessel, just water, and the shadow of the object, stretching toward the horizon. The next page held a transcript from a magnetic tape recording. I don't know where we are. All equipment's dead. Time is wrong. No one's responding. Final note. Not consistent with any known military or civilian frequencies recorded in 1954. Edward closed the file, but it was too late. In that moment, he knew he'd become part of it, an invisible thread, now tied to something humans were never meant to know. 3 weeks later, Edward began to feel watched. A week after that, he tried to access the hallway leading to the vault. Passcode denied. His badge still worked, but access was blocked. He tried a level 2 override. The entire system locked down for 60 seconds. In the silence of the corridor, Edward felt a bone-deep chill. There were no footsteps, but his own. No one else on the 5th level. No cameras turning. No hum from the vents. Everything was deathly still. He stepped back. From under the unmarked steel door, a red light seeped through, thin as a thread, flickering like fire. And then, he heard something from within. A low, rhythmic hum. Not an airplane, not a generator, more like some kind of machine being kept alive. This wasn't imagination. He was a seasoned security specialist, trained in counterintelligence. But cars kept appearing in his rearview mirror. Emails showed as opened without triggering a log. Messages arrived from unknown senders, cryptic yet eerily familiar. You read the right line. At a small cafe near Clarendon, a silver-haired woman sat across from him without warning. She said only one sentence: "Don't trust what the file says. It's not meant to be read. It's meant to be buried." Edward couldn't remember when he left the cafe. Security footage from that day showed a 3-hour blackout. The Pentagon never truly sleeps, but there are dead hours in the night, moments when the corridors grow thick with silence. The flickering fluorescent lights buzz like dying insects, and the wind, though no one knows from where, whispers through the vents like voices trying to return. 03:12 a.m. Edward Marks returned to the 5th level. He told no one. No tracker was active. He left no trace. Only an old access card, one that had been officially deactivated since 1995, still opened one door. A door with no name. It opened quietly, as if it had been waiting for him all along. No alarm, no camera aimed inside, no guard in sight. Inside was a room roughly 30 square meters, but it felt heavier as though it held the weight of an entire century. Steel filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer unmarked. A single large desk sat at the center, dimly lit. Upon it, 7 files, neatly arranged, unlocked, unsealed, as if awaiting the final soul reckless enough to read them. Edward reached for the first. Handwritten notes accompanied a transcript of a conversation between 2 pilots. Male voices American, but the dates had been redacted. The recording said, "We've passed the coastline, but the map doesn't match. The sea, it's not right." The second pilot mumbled something about a shadow under the water, following us. Attached was a scorched photograph of the cockpit, smashed altitude dial, blood smeared along one side of the window. Coordinates scribbled beneath the image pointed to the Atlantic Ocean, near the Bermuda Triangle. The file closed with 3 lines, no distress signal, no identifiable data, no official release. Edward felt ice along his spine. He shut the file and moved to the second. An old magnetic reel, scrawled on the label, Project, Pale Voice Low Frequency Range, Wyoming 1973. Next to it, a typed transcript. A woman's voice repeats an indecipherable word, Anculum, over and over. In the background, a rising screech of wind and distortion. T the 38th second. A man's voice cuts in thin, cold, unnerving. They never left. We just learned to ignore them. The attached technical report states, frequency 17 Hz can trigger emotional dysregulation in healthy adults. The experiment was terminated after a mass crying episode inside a sealed observation room. File 3 was a shock.no report. No notes, only a Polaroid photo, a snowy field. At the center, a white vertical beam of light, no shadows cast. No visible source. On the back, written in shaky ink, it looked at me. The photo was linked to the missing person file of telecommunications. Engineer James Monroe, the man who took it 2 days before disappearing. The case was never publicly investigated. Edward counted again, 7 files. But on the metal shelving, there was clearly a missing slot. There had once been an 8th. Who took it? Why? And why did they leave a message scratched into the dusty surface with a small blade? Marks leave while you still can. Edward froze. The air in the room grew dense. The ceiling light flickered, reflected in his shadow on the steel desk. He glimpsed movement, but not his own. Whoever had come before him had left something behind. Not a threat, a warning. As he stepped out, the door shut behind him with a dry, metallic click. A single question echoed in his mind, repeating like a signal from a depth too far to reach. What would you believe if even your government doesn't want you to read it? And if what you saw never officially existed? You may not fear the truth, but you will fear knowing you once touched it. 2 weeks after Edward Mark stepped into the restricted records room, he vanished. Not in a dramatic way, no gunshots, no scene, no trace. He simply stopped appearing. The book he had been writing, The Fifth Vault, was abruptly discontinued. The manuscript stored on his personal device was wiped clean, with the last recorded login at 2:47 a.m. His scheduled appearance at the Defense Library was canceled at the last minute, with a single line note, the author is no longer able to proceed. No press coverage, no missing person notice, no family member came forward. But in a hidden forum for national security researchers, an anonymous post appeared with only a headline. Marks crossed the line. There was no content, only a string of coordinates, pointing to a remote rocky region in Utah over 20 miles from an abandoned Air Force radar station. When an independent investigation team arrived, they found a broken voice recorder, its battery scorched. In the salvageable portion of the tape, Edward's voice whispered, fragmented and weak, "They don't want us to remember. Someone's erasing everything. No one knows who they are." But a term began surfacing. Cleaners, not assassins, not agents. They don't kill, they erase. Those who spoke about files like Edward shared a common fate. They either vanished or became non-functional. Professor Franklin Liddell, who once referenced the Fifth Level Archive during a 2002 space physics symposium, now resides in a memory care facility, diagnosed with deep retrograde amnesia. He no longer remembers his wife or children. Navy sonar engineer Sam Trevors, who uploaded a fragment of audio labeled Bermuda Object 1954, was found unconscious in a DC subway station. Within less than 3 hours, his passport, phone, and bank accounts had all been disabled. 1. Anonymous witness, formerly a classified records handler for the Department of Defense, recalled something chilling. One night, I got an emergency email from the internal system, a request to inspect a file marked Category X. Absolute erasure. When I opened it, all I saw was a grainy video clip, a man opening a steel door. But what stopped my heart, it was Edward Marks. The timestamp on the video, 3:12 a.m., the exact hour he was last logged accessing Vault data. Within industry circles, Vault 5 is spoken of as a gravity well of information, a place where files not meant to exist are still kept, just in case someone, someday, has the courage to access them. But anyone who gets close is handled, not with force, but with existential erasure. You won't be killed. You'll be removed from reality's infrastructure, as if you never lived inside it. Though Edward's accounts were erased, faint unofficial traces remain. A blurred photo, a corrupted scan of a draft from his unfinished book. Its title, Undated Files, the Things Government Doesn't Want Government to Know. A former private defense contractor known only as H shared this story. Once, I was hired to clean out an unused office at an old military site. While removing equipment, I found a gray document box, no markings. Inside, everything had been burned, except for one page, wedged between two steel plates. It read, Marks never went hiking. He never left DC. The truth clearly doesn't live in what's published. It lives in what's buried so deeply that even memory must kneel before it. No one can say for certain if Edward Marks is alive. But those who once knew him, who read his words, who touched the ideas he left behind, all reported the same strange feeling, as if a part of them had been quietly pulled away. Shortly after Edward Marks disappeared, an audio recording was leaked on a closed, military encrypted forum. The file lasted only 4 minutes and 17 seconds, with no metadata, no traceable source. Its file name was simple, Fel Transcripto 71954, a nave. Recording began with a male voice, slow, steady, in the crisp cadence of mid-20th century US military English. This is Eagle 4. No visual, no radar, but something's following us. It's not behind. It's around. Then came static radio interference, the sound of frequencies warping, folding, and another voice, untraceable, unclassified, emerging in broken segments. Time is not line. Time is echo. Time is memory. It didn't sound human, at least, not like any voice ever captured on record. Its tone shifted unpredictably, frequencies destabilized as if it were being transmitted from a device not built in our era. The NSA initially dismissed it as a fabrication, but after cross-referencing with signal samples logged over Bermuda in 1954, they found a disturbing match. The frequency fluctuation aligned 97.6% with an unsolved incident involving an experimental flight unit, a mission not listed in any official report. Independent investigators traced the audio's origin to Room 5, the internal codename for the restricted records room. And this wasn't the only one. At least 11 unreleased audio recordings have been cataloged, scattered across Cold War era archival systems, each with titles more disturbing than the last. Project Orbit Shift, July 1962. Audio fragment, Onlybell Hollow Incident Transcript, Language unknown. Black Vault 07 Temporal inversion warnings at a frequency initiate containment protocol. Some of these recordings, when played at slow speed, emit sounds resembling weeping. When accelerated, laughter. Others are nothing but footsteps, but in 3D spectral reconstructions. The steps don't trace through three-dimensional space as we know it. a former CIA audio technician known only as R, broke silence after listening to Zeta frequency. I've tuned signals from Black Ops briefings in Iceland, clean satellite intel from deep space. But that tape, it sounded like it was recorded before the recorder was ever invented. IT doesn't belong to the present, it belongs to a moment still, waiting to happen. But what terrified analysts most wasn't the voices, it was what lay hidden beneath them. In the audio spectrum of Black Fault 07, deep in the third frequency layer, a Morse sequence was discovered. When decrypted, it revealed one chilling message: Edward Marks still here. The recording was dated 1983. Edward Marks had only just joined government service at the time. What does that mean? A transmission from the future? A temporal feedback error? Or proof that whatever exists within the restricted records room does not obey the laws of time as we know them? Dr. Harold Kim, a space-time physicist at MIT, once said after reviewing the tapes, if these recordings are real, it means time can be stored like audio waves. And like all waves it can echo. Someone or something may be replaying memories we haven't lived yet. Today, the recordings are re-encrypted within Level 6 archives, far beyond the clearance of standard defense personnel. But one copy still exists, on an old magnetic tape, leaked, now quietly passed around within the underground, ghost frequency community, and late at night, across hand-built radios, tuned to 19.47-19.52 kHz. Those who dare still press play, hoping to hear just once more a voice that escaped time itself. They say photographs never lie, but what if a photograph tells the truth? The human eye was never meant to understand? In 1987, a civilian satellite named GEO-SAT-2, operated by a private company, captured a sequence of anomalous images over the skies of Arizona, an uninhabited region, devoid of military bases or infrastructure. Of the 16-frame sequence, image number 12 revealed a clearly defined octagonal structure, reflective like metal, surrounded by a faint indigo halo. The next image 13 was pure white. The GEO-SAT-2 data system crashed 18 hours after the download. Within 3 days, the parent company was completely acquired by an anonymous investment fund. The satellite imaging engineer in charge, Thomas Lane, was reported as having resigned for personal reasons. No one has seen him since. 1 year later, a photograph was discovered in Edward Marks's document cache scanned from original Kodachrome film, marked in red ink. Cannot be matched with any known terrain on U.S. topographic records. The image, an unnamed mountain range, hovering just above the highest peak, is a perfectly circular black void, no light reflection, no contrast, like an ink stain suspended in 3D space. It wasn't an object, it was an absence. Around the same time, the Department of Defense logged an anomalous radar signature over the Bering Sea, the same region where Helix Group disappeared in 1973. The radar showed the object at a speed of 0 km/h, then instantly jumped to 6,000 km/h, then disappeared along the z-axis, not north, not south, not forward or backward, but out of three-dimensional space. Reconnaissance photos taken from U-2 aircraft also revealed a disturbing repetition. 3 separate flights captured identical images of dense forest, identical down to the shadows, the leaf positions, the curve of every branch. Yet their GPS coordinates were 92 kilometers apart. Military imaging analyst John Vereen, in a classified internal report, wrote, "If this is fake, then someone is recreating reality, pixel by pixel. But if it's real, we may be photographing the same reality, echoing in different slices of time." One of the most heavily classified dossiers, known only by its code name, Aegis Refraction, describes a sequence of satellite images obscured, not by digital compression, but by an unidentified artificial haze, rendered in real time. Analysis revealed that the haze was not natural, but an auto-concealment algorithm controlled by internal security protocols, meaning even satellite operators were denied access to the data they were collecting. Only one photograph from that sequence ever escaped. It was a physical print, paper, scanned and duplicated before destruction. The image has haunted researchers for over 2 decades. A room empty. No doors, no windows, nothing but a wooden table, and on the table, a picture frame, face down. Caption attached, undetermined coordinates. Light source appears from direction with no window. Frame reflects the photographer, but the photographer is standing behind a wall. So what is real? What is manufactured? And what makes these photographs so dangerous that they must be erased from existence altogether? Every morning at the Pentagon begins the same way. The soft buzz of security scanners, the heavy thud of boots on concrete floors, and the suspended breath of those carrying packets of information where a single misplaced word could alter the trajectory of global policy. Amid bomb-resistant walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and security cameras that never blink, there exist doors meant to be opened only by people who are meant to disappear. Edward Marks never intended to uncover anything. He started off as a quiet, meticulous technician in radio signal maintenance. Over the years, he rose to become the supervisor of a deep storage archive, a subterranean warehouse of paper records, most of which were read once, then burned, sealed away, or erased from existence. On March 14, 1998, while inspecting a defunct radar data vault, Edward stumbled upon a yellow file marked Bermuda 1954 covered object unexplained. He read every line, heart pounding. The document recounted a U.S. Navy surveillance flight encountering a mysterious object floating over the ocean. Magnetic field interference, disoriented flight instruments, time skipping forward in abrupt 6-minute increments. This wasn't science. It was the fracturing of the clockwork of reality. From that moment, Edward began transcribing the file by hand, marking every data void, every redacted page, and most chilling, every note labeled self-erase in 60 minutes. He realized that to challenge such a structure, one had to become the denial of oneself. In the summer of 2001, Edward began to notice a pattern. Sealed files weren't classified by date, but by event frequency. Each unexplained incident seemed to coincide with an unusual celestial occurrence. Solar eclipses, meteor showers, or magnetic anomalies recorded by NOAA. He dug into the records from 1973, the mass disappearance in Montana. A small town called Dales Hollow abruptly went silent on all frequencies. 94 residents vanished without a trace. Radar logs showed nothing but a faint bloom of static, like a fingerprint burned into space-time. Edward knew what he was doing was illegal, but he didn't stop. He uncovered a black box recording from a 1981 plane crash in the Appalachian Mountains. What chilled him wasn't the impact, it was the audio just before it. A hoarse voice on the tape, repeating, "We're not here anymore. We're not here anymore." No official report included that segment. By 2003, Edward began reaching out to former technicians and internal staff who had worked in the lower levels. One retired camera system engineer told him, "There are zones marked as dead frames, not because the camera is broken, but because the image itself isn't real." A former security officer handed him a copy of a blueprint, a sublevel without stairs or elevators, accessible only through air vents marked as the K-zone. That was where the restricted archive room was said to reside. The puzzle began to take shape. One radar log showed an object moving in impossible arcs, simultaneously appearing hundreds of miles apart. A surveillance photo from Nevada revealed shadows falling in directions that contradicted the position of the sun. An audio file, containing sound frequencies beyond human hearing, induced insomnia and prolonged hallucinations in 3 testers. None of it came with explanations. Only a red stamp, declassified by order, and the emblem of a double circle A, symbol found in no official security manual. Edward started having recurring dreams. A doorless room, light pouring from a ceiling he couldn't see, a storm of floating documents, falling slowly, forming the shape of a figure staring directly at him. One morning, he woke to find a small circular burn mark on his wrist. No one could explain its origin. Truth stopped being something he searched for. It became something that stalked him. Every email he sent failed to deliver. Every outbound call from DC was rerouted. His home alarm clock froze every night at 3:19 a.m. the same time the Pentagon archive systems routinely glitched during what was officially listed as scheduled maintenance. Edward began drafting a manuscript, The Fifth Vault. In it, he proposed a theory that no one had dared articulate, that somewhere beneath America lies a fractured structure in the fabric of space-time, and the Pentagon is the only mechanism preventing it from leaking into the world. But before the manuscript could be completed, Edward vanished during a hiking trip in Utah. No body, no trail, only a scorched voice recorder, and a fragment of audio garbled, interrupted. If you find this, don't believe what they say about reality. It was never broken. It was chosen to be hidden. A few weeks after Edward disappeared, a violent storm swept through the Utah desert, erasing any trace that might have remained from his final journey. But those who had quietly worked alongside Edward began to notice small signs. A strangely encrypted paragraph in a 1976 NASA document leading to coordinates that didn't appear on any conventional map. An auto-generated email sent from Edward's inbox precisely at midnight on the day he vanished, containing only one sentence: "Time is a structure under strain." In the months that followed, a number of independent researchers, most of whom had been previously denied high-level federal access, began publishing leaked copies of documents rumored to have come from the vault. These documents contained things that couldn't be verified. Photographs of a night sky filled with constellations unrecognized by modern astronomy, satellite feeds whose timestamps deviated by nearly 3 minutes from atomic clocks, and most chilling, a 1957 tape repeating the same message in a calm, detached voice: "You are living in the wrong direction." No one could confirm the source of these materials, yet all bore a similar signature, the double circle emblem, and a header that had been intentionally blurred by digital obfuscation. Experts dubbed this category Phantom Class classified files, whispered to be never meant to exist, yet continuing to reappear like ink stains that refuse to fade. A group of investigative journalists eventually located Edward Mark's ex-wife. She said only one sentence during a 2-hour interview: "He once told me if he ever vanished, don't look for him here." When asked what he meant by here, she simply looked west toward the setting sun. 3 months later, a video clip was anonymously uploaded to an encrypted platform. It showed a man in outdoor gear, back turned to the camera, standing before a wide fracture in the desert rock. A faint voice was captured on tape: "This is the last time I'll say this. They don't hide the truth because it's too big. They hide it because it doesn't belong to us." The frame shook gently. The man stepped into the crevice. The screen faded to black. Then 3 lines of white text appeared: "The fifth vault was never a place. It was a door, and he had the key. Now, it's open." No one could verify the identity of the man, but the voice, gait, and silver gray coat matched the last known description of Edward Marks. Edward's personnel file was purged from federal systems that same month. All records referencing the restricted archive room were reclassified under Level 6 Black Security, a level typically reserved for biological warfare contingencies. His manuscript, The Fifth Vault, remains in restricted archives, untitled, undated, author unknown. But the final page has now been altered, handwritten, in faded ink. Some files aren't meant to be opened, only to remind us, if you know too much. Sometimes memory is the first thing to go. Every nation has its secrets, but the true secrets aren't missiles, war strategies, or clandestine deals between superpowers. The true secrets are the ones no one dares admit. They've seen things that lie beyond understanding, beyond even belief. That room, the restricted archive, has never been officially acknowledged. There are no photos, no access logs, no trace of it exists in the Pentagon's security systems. And yet, strangely, many know of it. They speak of it in hushed tones, or with a short nod, or with nothing more than a look. Some say they've gone deeper into the Pentagon than they ever should have, and that the surveillance system sometimes records things that never truly happened. When we touch the edge of what we call reality, we don't just shake the foundations of reason, we unravel the very mechanics of perception itself. What happens when a document not meant to exist is open? Could it destabilize a government? Or perhaps an entire generation's trust in policy and truth in the very world they believe they live in? We often romanticize those who search for truth, cast them as heroes. But Edward Marks was never a hero. He was a technician, an engineer, an ordinary man. And when he began to see what lay beneath the surface of those documents, he didn't rise to glory. He fell into silence, sending encrypted emails, living in constant paranoia, haunted by the feeling that someone was always watching him through the ceiling vents. Truth doesn't always look like it does in the movies. Sometimes it's a garbled tape, indecipherable. Sometimes it's a black and white photo smudged by something no one can explain. Sometimes it's a manuscript no one dares to print, or the phantom sensation that something followed you home. The responses about Edward were locked behind dead ends. They said he got lost. They said it was just an accident. They said the files he accessed were fabrications. And the truth was buried beneath those same recycled headlines over and over again. But in forgotten corners of archived vaults, in drawers left uncleaned, there still remain pages stamped with a single warning: top secret, never to be released. We still live in a world shaped by what we've never been told. And perhaps because of that, it's what we don't know that's choosing us. From within some dark archive room hidden deep inside America, one investigative journalist once asked, "What if truth isn't meant to be understood but feared?" The answer still waits there, behind a dusty door, filed in a room no one dares to open.